I was listening to a podcast recently where one of these tech bros was on the show, and he started a company. I think it was called FOMO, or the product that they released, the software I think was called FOMO, and the podcast was around the. I think the podcast is called Built to Sell, and it's people who had a business idea, to set up a successful business, a product or service, whatever. But the most important thing is that on that show, they only interview people who took an idea, a concept, built a business around it, and then eventually they were able to sell the business successfully and then exit after a couple of years. So the whole point of the show is for you to listen and see other examples of how people build their businesses, and I guess what the author, the person who has the podcast, because he's also an author, he's written some books. I think the book is also titled Built to Sell. So I think the gospel that he's trying to promote is that to be a successful business person, you should be trying to build something that doesn't need you to be at the helm, and that's precisely the reason why you can sell the business later on, because whoever it is that comes along to buy the business, they know that they don't have to buy you as a total package. So, for instance, back here in Nigeria, we have Dangote, and Dangote has done his thing. So he has the cement arm. Okay, the juice business didn't work. I don't know if they entered into rice. Okay, no, he didn't do rice, but cement is fine. The spaghetti, that's doing okay. What else? And other things. But the thing is, even though the company name is called Dangote, and right now he's at the helm, it's obvious that if anybody wanted to come and buy the business, they could buy the group of companies or any part of the portfolio, and they will be okay because the man himself adds value to the whole thing, but he's not absolutely indispensable for the whole project running. So you could comfortably go and buy Dangote Spaghetti Industries or whatever that company is called, and you would be okay because you're buying a business unit that can run all by itself. Anyway, the point of today's podcast is not to say that this is how we should build our businesses, because I know that in the wedding and the event space, there are some people who are absolutely comfortable with being self-employed or with having a lifestyle business where you are at the helm, you decide everything, things are done at your own pace, and you're not trying to build the next Facebook or whatever. I mean, you're not trying to do a multi-million naira exit. So that's not the point of today's podcast. But one thing that I found curious at that Built to Sell podcast episode was that this guy who built this thing called FOMO, this market application called FOMO, he was talking about how at some stage in the business he was able to reduce everything into writing, and I think he called it the FOMO method or something like that. So basically, he's on his podcast and he's gushing on and he's going on and on about the FOMO method, about how they created this thing, so that people in the company would be able to run. The business, would be able to do all sorts of processes without having to refer back to him. And he was going on and gushing about this method. I can't remember what he called it, but for now, let's just call it the FOMO method. He didn't actually call it the FOMO method, but let's just call it the FOMO method for now. So he keeps going on and on about how this method is, how it helped the business and is revolutionary and blah 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 and stuff like that. And not to talk down the idea, but it actually is a very good idea that when people come into your business, when you hire salespeople, managers, marketers, whoever, even cleaners or people who answer the phone, there should be something that they can refer to say, this is how you do the job. These are the contingencies that we have to keep an eye out for. This is how we deal with customers when XYZ happens, and blah blah blah. These are the outcomes that we're aiming for. So it's really commendable that we should have those sorts of systems in the business. But the whole thing just pointed to something that I have been critical about of the business space of late, which is that people sit in their businesses and they come up with stuff, and for some reason they assume that they have created something new, and then they start building thought leadership around this new thing, and then they get a bunch of disciples. But unfortunately, like I've said time and time again on the podcast, there are very few things that you're going to do in the business space that is absolutely new, that hasn't been thought about by anyone. Because this thing that the chap is going on and on about, talking about the formal brain or the formal method or the something brain or whatever it was, actually isn't new. For those of you who are listening to the podcast right now, who have backgrounds in business management, project management, those sorts of things, you already know that this thing exists, and it's called the standard operating procedure. So this guy 3 years ago came up with this thing, and he's calling it the formal brain, the formal method, the formal something, 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 and he's building thought leadership around it. But meanwhile, those of you who are management professionals know that there's something called a standard operating procedure that people know, and the methods and techniques and ideas and principles around it. And basically, people have been using standard operating procedures, for the last, 300, 500 years or however long. So it's not anything new. And that's one of the reasons why I advise people that you need to be careful about the gurus that you follow and things like that. And you really should stay clear of all these people who are talking about new revolutionary ideas and new ways of thinking and things like that. You're better off just sticking with people who are following the traditional ideas, who have mastery of the traditional ideas and principles, because these people are going to guide you down tested waters. So, anybody who listened to that show and who was curious and who decides to follow that guy, and you learn about his formal method or his formal brain or his whatever about reducing your ideas onto paper, you're just going to get pulled down his own personal fancy about how these things ought to be done. But then, if you go and meet an established management consultant or anybody who is an aficionado around project management and things like that, this person will tell you that, oh yeah, this thing exists. It's called a standard operating procedure. Traditionally, this is how it's done. This is how the idea is applied in modern circumstances, or this is how the idea is applied in your industry. You'll be better off looking to that person for guidance, because this person is going to lead you down well-tested waters rather than somebody else who thinks he's coming up with a new idea and he's just fishing around in the dark trying to find the most established way of doing that. So that is actually the reason why I'm making today's podcast recording, just to go on this rant again and repeat something that I've said time and time again in the past. Business is tough. We need motivation and we need ideas to keep us going. And I think the way forward is not to look for new gurus who are coming and espousing the new light that they have seen. Look to people who are doing the traditional thing, the well worn out things, the principles, because those are well tested by human condition, by business experience, by the market, and that is where your salvation lies. And that's the reason why on this podcast I'm not here spouting anything new. I'm not talking about any Tavishima methods of selling. I'm not trying to create anything new. The ideas that we talk about over here on the podcast, like when I talk about how you need to qualify a prospect, engage in conversations, figure out what the problem is, qualification, discovery, all the principles, all the things that we talk about here on the podcast, these are not things that I've made up. These are things that already exist and have existed for hundreds of years. And I say it time and time again. We discuss an idea, we see how it applies to a particular scenario, and I say it that you can check YouTube, you can Google it, or if you have a sibling who is still in university right now doing business admin or something, you can pull up their textbooks and you find all these ideas there. So these are worn ideas that you can use to grow your business and to move things forward. So bottom line, let's stop looking for new messiahs. Let's just look for the old fogies who know the sound principles and the sound ideas thoroughly, and we'll follow them and we'll be fine. So we don't need to come up with some new formal brain or formal something method or this method or that. We don't need anything new. So if you think you have absolute chaos in your business and you don't think you have a viable asset that you can sell because you're too involved with the day-to-day running of things, let's say you're a wedding planner and you're thinking about how to sell your business later on, right now you're Kemi LLC wedding planners. Oh, by the way, for any Kemis listening to this, I'm sorry, I don't know why, I just started using the name and it just stuck. So you're worried that nobody's going to buy the business because Kemi is attached to it. The solution is not to start running after formal brain, formal method, some new technique or whatever. Just go talk to a management consultant, and they will tell you that, okay, yes, what you need to do is create a standard operating procedure, and this is how we're going to go about it. This is how it has been done traditionally. This is how it's done in the service environment, and perhaps we can try 1, 2, 3 ideas about how to adapt it to a wedding and an event business. So let's stop looking for messiahs and let's look for the old traditional ideas that are already there. We're going to spend a lifetime if we want to apply the traditional methods correctly, and there still will be a whole lot more to do. So while there's a lot of stuff already on the ground that we haven't done, why are we running around looking for all these highfalutin new ideas to try out? So yeah, that's the summary of today's recording basically. So let's stop looking for saviors. All the things that we need to move the business forward, they're out there. They're traditional ideas. It doesn't have to be anything revolutionary. Just if you have a younger brother, a younger sister in school studying business admin, just go and take their book and you'll be fine. So take their book, open to the chapter on selling and marketing, follow whatever is there, you'll be fine. Start your journey from there, you'll be fine. You don't need the latest. You don't need the latest guru or mastermind course or whatever on, how to break the bank in 100 days or how to become a billionaire in 300 days or whatever. All those things they come up with. Anyway, let me stop with the rant. Way past 10 minutes, so I'll just put a pin in it here. So thank you very much for listening to today's episode. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.